All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the October 13th Planning Board Workshop 2022, for those of you keeping score at home. Noreen, can we get a roll call for attendance, please?
Bonnie Franson's out. We have Jeff filling in as chairman this evening.
Here.
Jeff Manson. Pat Shea. Here. Nick Napoli.
Here.
Dylan Penn.
Here.
Robert Garzak. He's the first alternate filling in on the board, and Louis Rivera.
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like to point out the fire exits. There's the main entrance that we all entered through. Behind us on the other side, through those doors, will lead you out to the patio. There's emergency exits behind us and through the kitchen on the side. So plenty of ways out. If I can ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Before we get started with tonight's agenda, for the planning board's purposes, if you'd seen the agenda, we're pushing off BJ's from tonight until our meeting next week, just so you're aware of that. We've also limited the number of minutes that we can go through. With Bonnie not here, neither of those things are things we can take care of tonight. Before we do get started with our remaining agenda, just a little town of Monroe business for those of you watching at home, especially, but for everyone here. This Saturday, the 15th, is the Town of Monroe Food Truck Festival. It's become one of the preeminent events here in the Town of Monroe. There's going to be between 15 and 20 food trucks there, 4 different bands. There will be a beer garden. This fall's beneficiary is Monroe Gives, which is a relatively new 3-year-old organization here in the town of Monroe. So it's a great opportunity to come out, meet some of the board from there and some of the other volunteers, learn more about that. If you're interested in volunteering or participating, their big holiday drive is coming up as we speak. That, again, is this Saturday, and it's from 11 to 6 o'clock. That's in O&R Park, which is at the corner of Orange and Rockland Road and Route 208, just as you're coming into the village off of the highway at exit 130. John, would you like to come up and bat first?
Hello? John Queenan from Lankin Tully, engineer for the applicant for the 127 Seven Springs Road subdivision. We were last before you in June. We had just come in initially with our conceptual layout of a 4-lot subdivision of the property. It's located at 127 Seven Springs, and it's approximately about 9.5 acres in size. The proposal we had before you was to subdivide the property into 4 single-family residential lots within the SR 10 zoning district. And we were proposing a cul-de-sac off of Seven Springs Road to service the subdivision. And at the time, there were some questions because there's a 25-foot right-of-way on either property, our property and the neighbor's property, for common access. And so the board at the time requested that the applicant approach the neighbor and get him to sign on and acknowledge that what we're showing is he's okay with. We did receive that sign off, so that lot will be becoming part of the application just for use of the right-of-way for the easement. And we did some other changes to the map, some minor changes to address Sean's comments, but we really haven't moved forward yet because in going to the neighbor and describing what we were doing, he has concerns whether or not the road will be a public road versus a private road. And before we kind of go down the road, it makes a big difference for the future for his parcel as to whether or not we're proposing it as a public street, but whether or not it will actually be taken as a public street, because private road has much different, I'll say, lot requirements and a cap on the number of lots that can be put on a street, whereas the public street does not. So really, the reason why I wanted to come before the board tonight was to discuss that issue before we go any further, so we can take that back to the neighbor and make sure that he's comfortable with whatever direction that we're proceeding in. The map right now proposes a public street. It's a cul-de-sac. It's just shy of 500 feet in length, servicing the 4 lots. So that's really where we're at this point, and why I'm here tonight.
So, Ashley, if I remember correctly, when there's 5 lots, it has to be a public street. It's not required to be a public street with only 4 lots, which is what's currently proposed, because the neighbor doesn't have any plans yet.
Yeah, so a private road, I believe the limit that you could have off a private road is 4 homes, 4 lots.
Unless the front 2 get their legal frontage from public road. 6 could theoretically.
One on either side of the road could be,
Right, that would front on Seven Springs.
but the driveway would have to go out to Seven Springs,
It
and the
doesn't,
house,
it doesn't
or no?
necessarily have to, but
We would just have to
the front,
make
the
sure-
legal frontage would have to be on Seven Springs.
So I think that's really a question for the town board, whether or not, the town, you're proposing it as a public road, that's your desire, the applicant's desire is for it to be public. So it would really be, I don't know whether you've had any discussions with the town board as to, their highway super.
Yeah, so I had a note from last time that we were going to refer it to the town board once the grading was completed to ensure that all of the requirements of the town code in order to meet the more or less definition of a public road would be met pursuant to the town code. So that's what I was more or less looking for in my comment number 3 for tonight, was to make sure that all the requirements of a town road could be met so that we could refer it to the town board for their consideration to be dedicated.
We were on the other end.
So with that, why don't we run through the rest of your comments, Sean?
Sure.
We'll cover you both first.
Yeah, so I had a note about the lot coverage. In the bulk table, it was noted at 15%. I think that was a little too high. I just was looking for the exact number, or
Yeah,
closer,
we haven't-
closer to the exact number
I
of
haven't
the
calculated
lot
it yet.
coverage. There is Indian about on the property, so any tree clearing, more than likely you'll be looking to do the standard mitigation for that. Septics are proposed on the lots, and the testing for that would have to be witnessed by our office, which is standard. With regards to stormwater, the total disturbance is 3.5 acres, so a SWIP will be required. I did have a concern with the lot layout since there wasn't area preserved for stormwater management. So it's something to consider, especially for the subdivision layout. Oh yeah, and comment number 8 was the one that we were looking for the grading in order to refer it to the town board. It will have to go to county planning as well as the village of South Blooming Grove since it's within 500 feet, and that's all I had.
Ashley?
So just a few additional, for purposes of seeker, it would be an unlisted action. And I would ask that the EAF be revised to identify the town board as a required approval, and also the disturbance has been reduced to 3.5 acres. I believe the original EAF had more disturbance on that, and any other updates that would be necessary for the current version of the plan. There was an owner's endorsement submitted for the neighboring property. The Orange County records indicate the owner Seven Springs Realty, Inc., not Seven Springs Realty Corp. So it'll need an updated owner's endorsement that reflects that correct owner's name and also Mr. Weiss's official position in the corporation. So it should say president or whatever his role is, where it asks for his title there. And the form is a standard form that refers to the premises described in the application. So if you could just make a note also saying that he's the owner of the adjacent lot, which is SBL 1141.1.
Okay, I'll add that to the address, that's fine.
There's that 25-foot right-of-way. I think we had asked for copies of the reference, any deeds or agreements that relate to that 25-foot right-of-way, and if there's any restrictions there. The subdivision map should contain a note referring to restrictions on construction in the portions of the RPO district. So I know there's no improvements proposed in there, but there should be a note to alert owners that there would be restrictions in the event there was ever going to be construction in those areas. Just a minor clarification, the sheet 4 description in the drawing index doesn't match the title sheet. One says site plan, one says utility plan. The subdivision is classified as a major subdivision since it involves a new road. A cluster plan is required, and it can't be waived under these circumstances because more than 5 acres is involved. I think, and also there'd be well testing required.
Cluster plan, what would the board be looking for in this case?
If you go, the code 5721.7, and it requires submission of the conservation plan and conventional plan. So a conservation plan to show, if there's any resources on the property that would be, a benefit to preserving, to pursue a clustered layout. If you take a look at that section, all the requirements. But I don't know whether first, status of the road and what that might be.
Yeah, our path is to figure out the road first, just because of the neighbor's concern. And then we can get to the cluster. I don't think there'll be a major difference between the conventional and the cluster, if there is any at all.
Okay, so since we're going to have to look at the cluster, do we not need to set the yield on the conventional first? And do we have to wait until the
At
public
first you
road
would
issue
have,
has been?
I think the road is one, because that's really what's triggering also the requirement for the cluster review. It's because there's a new road proposed, so, I guess it would be a private road instead of, they're gonna probably need the cluster. Or, identifying what resource. This would essentially be a conventional plan, right? So you would have the yield here. It's really just to see whether you want to pursue the conventional or cluster, which there might not be very many differences, but that's what the code.
Right, but I assume we would have to say this is the yield prior to looking at the
Once you have
cluster.
both, you would do it when you have,
But you feel that
both
we should
together.
wait till the issue of the road is resolved prior to doing that? Okay. Let's go around, see if there's any questions. Nick?
Nothing. Nothing.
Dylan?
No questions.
Pat?
Just looking at, is this coming on? Yeah, okay. So, looking at the layout there, I'm looking at proposed lot 3, and I guess I don't understand the layout there. You got lot 3, and you got proposed lot 3, you got lot 4, and you got proposed lot 4. What's that all about?
Oh, they're just different, they're just duplicate labels.
I'm sorry?
Duplicate labels. So when the program, when CAD calculates it, it's proposed lot 3, and then there's another one that's saying lot 3. One is in square feet, one is in acres.
Okay, so it's all the same lot, and nothing else can be built on there?
No, that'd be its own, that's proposed lot 3. It's just one of them is in square feet, the notation says proposed lot square feet, the other one is in acres.
The same thing?
Same thing.
Okay, got it. That's all.
Thank you. Bob? No questions. Louis?
So the way alternates work for the planning board, they are only filling in for vacant seats. So someone is filling in this evening for Bonnie, but Louis is just here observing.
Got it. Thank you. We're talking about the adjacent property owner having common ownership with this property, or was I confused about that? Is the lot on either side owned by the same individual, the same entity?
Oh, they're different people.
Okay,
And where the
I
common
was
ownership
just
comes
confused.
in is, back some time ago, they established a 25-foot right-of-way for the benefit of each lot down the property line. So there's 25 feet on ours that he can use, and there's 25 feet on his that we can use. And I think it was meant for a common access. So the neighbor, he just doesn't want to be left out. That if it becomes a private road, that we get 4 lots and he gets 1. I think that's his concern.
but would the easement require that? Would you have to provide for the public road so that they can do that? But you have the easement. You could do it as a private road.
Correct.
If necessary.
Or if
That's an
necessary,
option.
we can move the access out of that.
Out
off
of the
that.
easement, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or at least out of their half of the easement?
correct.
Right.
correct.
Okay. And nothing at all is being proposed where the ridgeline overlay is, so it's sort of a non-issue
Correct.
in relation to this application, and nothing on the far side of that.
I will just note that no grading has been done, so that, obviously we can't confirm that no disturbance will be in the ridgeline preservation at this point.
We're not going there. One is correct, but in that area.
And when you show the areas of disturbance, it'll confirm that for us.
Yes.
Okay. Right, so I mean, I think that we're at where we're at. You're going to have to pursue with the town board whether they'd be willing to accept that as a public road. I mean, I think it certainly makes sense from a planning perspective because you have the adjacent property, and it'd be better to have one road rather than you do a road and the adjacent property owner does a road.
Correct. Just from an application that shall not be named, I just want to make sure that we get this right.
For purposes of moving forward this evening, the board can classify the action as unlisted, declare your intent to be lead agency, and authorize circulation of a lead agency notice upon receipt of a revised EAF and grading plan.
Terrific. I'll make a motion for that we classify this as an unlisted action pending the revised EAF so that we can
Would be-
circulate.
Specified as unlisted, declare your intent to be lead agency, and authorize circulation for lead agency upon receipt of the revised EAF and grading plan.
Thank you. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Noreen, if you would.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Robert Garstack.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else we can do for you tonight, John?
Just one thing, would the board have a concern if I did the grading plan, sent that to Sean, Sean was comfortable with that, could I then send that directly to the town board or have Sean send that so that, or do you
I'd
want us to come
suggest
back
that
here?
I would forward that to
Yeah.
the town board if that's okay.
Or do you want me to prepare that and come back?
No, I mean, I'm comfortable if the rest of the board is that if Sean reviews it and feels it's ready for the town to review, this is kind of a linchpin issue for this application, and I think we should get this settled one way or the other so that we can resolve any, because then we're going to have to look at the cluster and
Correct.
all those other things.
Yeah, although we'd like to see you at every meeting.
Right, it's not that. Anyone opposed to that? Okay,
Right, thank you.
great, so we will handle it that way. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
All right, as our other applicant has not joined us this evening,
Hey. I don't know, I sent him the stuff, and I said to him, I said, I'll see you tonight. And he said, yeah, I'm so happy you made me first. Usually he's towards the end. And
It's
David
been a while,
Namaka.
no, I know, it's been a while since we've seen David. Do you think he thinks we're still at 7:30? Has it been
No,
that
we've
long?
been at 6 for a while.
A while, but,
I don't remember if I sent him the agenda or not. I don't think I have, well, I don't have his phone number.
It's on his plans, his cell phone number's on his plans.
Oh, you go, Sean. I don't have those either. Because I'm surprised when he said,
I got it here, that's fine.
that's what I was wondering. Doesn't matter, we got rained out.
this application was,
Well, that's the other thing, he is usually here on the early side.
projects today. I'm so glad. A is 7, so unless he's thinking ZBA, not planning.
Thank you, John.
You,
Have a good
have a
night.
good evening. I'm drawing something on the agenda too, maybe not.
So there were two sets of minutes that we would be able to look at tonight without Bonnie. One was April,
Oh, I gave Bob my handwritten copy. Which ones, I marked, did you bring that agenda with you? Oh, so the first two, we cannot approve. We do not have enough members tonight. So April and August 11th, we were. August 16th, if everybody read them, September 8th, and September 20th, if everybody read them.
okay, I took a look at August 16th. Anyone else have a chance to look at the minutes? Okay. I have some nods. So let's, so which ones did you say? August 16th?
August 16th,
September
8th,
and September,
September 20th are available tonight to vote on.
all right, so this is the August 16th minutes. I mean, I can show them, but I can't really scroll them. And not everyone can see them anyway, but Ashley, no issue if we, is it possible when we're voting on these, as long as everyone can vote, that we vote on all of them? Can we do a motion to pass all 3 minutes, or do we need to do them individually? I was wondering about that earlier today.
As long as all three, I'm sorry, as long as everyone is able to vote on all of them, and if there's any changes, though, then those should.
Okay, so did anyone have any?
Hold on 1 second.
Yep, so you're gonna take a look at that for me?
20th, you cannot, you were not here. But we have Pat, Nick, Dylan, and Robert. But you can't do the 20th.
Okay, so we can do the 20th separately.
Robert can't do the 8th.
Robert,
I think
One,
you probably just do them
Yeah.
separately.
Yeah, let's
All
do
right,
them
so-
separate.
no Robert, no Jeff for the 20th. Everyone for August 16th?
August 16th, we're good, because the only other one that,
Not Robert.
Not Robert.
Okay,
no,
but we
so
still have enough of a quorum
I
to do
still have
these.
4, yeah.
All right, so let's just talk through these while we're waiting for David. August 16th, did anyone have any proposed changes? I did not. No. Okay. Can I have a motion that we approve the minutes from August 16th?
Give that motion.
Thank you, Nick. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Close, all right, we'll give it to Dylan.
Okay. All right, Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to September 8th, same 4. Anyone have any proposed changes on that? Need a minute to look at those, Pat? Those. I have a motion to pass the minutes from September 8th, please.
So moved.
A second, please. Second. Thank you. Noreen?
Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
All right, so then the 20th.
The 20th is the one I haven't looked at yet. I'm just taking a quick
Can't
look.
vote any,
Oh, well then, I would have no changes anyway. All right, so amongst the other 4 of you, any changes? Need a minute to look at it?
Yeah, let me just,
Thank you.
if you have changes, you can give them, Jeff, but you just can't vote.
I didn't watch it, so
Okay.
I haven't,
Oh,
I
right,
haven't
you
watched it
weren't
yet. I know.
He probably
It'd be
did,
impressive if he wasn't there and he had changes.
he probably did watch it, though.
I haven't watched this one yet. I probably.
Nothing else.
right?
I actually do have a proposed correction. Just looking at this real quick. Under Owen Drive, in the first section, road extension to connect to emergency access to Smith Farm, there's just a flip of letters, the N and the C in emergency. Thank you.
For some reason, this,
It just jumped out at me.
it's not doing spell check like it was. I have no idea why.
Right.
I'm like, I need spell check.
I'm sorry, Pat and Bob, you were good, or? Okay, so for the minutes for September 20th, may I have a motion that we pass those minutes?
I'll give that motion.
Thank you. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you.
Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Robert Garzak.
Aye.
All All right, so all the minutes have passed. Ashley, since we're waiting a few minutes for David, appropriate that we suspend the meeting temporarily? Like, can George stop recording, or do we need to stay in open session while we're waiting for David? I know he won't be long. I know where David lives. It's not far, but.
Pause and say,
We'll be
you're
right
waiting.
back.
Take a short break.
Okay, so the board will take a short recess while we're waiting for our next applicant. George, if you'll put us on pause? Thank you. If anyone would like to use the facilities, talk amongst yourself.
Better stop.
Really? Yeah. Sure you want to do that?
You've got a little time to consider it still, so.
Somebody had somebody. I recommend everybody should be married at least once.
All right, I'm just getting.
Get a different laptop.
No, it's just acting weird with the adapter. All right, I'm ready. Is everyone else? George, if you would roll them. Thank you, George. Okay, planning board coming out of adjournment, recess for a moment. We have our next applicant. If you would introduce yourself for our new members of the board and for the public at large.
My name is David Nimatko. We're the design professional firm working on this project. And so before I even begin, I'd like to thank the board for your patience and for waiting. I appreciate it. Since our last submission for this project at 339 Route 17M, we were asked to receive comments back from the New York State DOT, which we did. We had made the submission to comments back.
I cannot stand.
We received comments back from the DOT, and we included or addressed those comments within the design plans that we submitted to you. That did revise the project somewhat, where we had to reduce the footprint of the building, but we added to a half-story and showed the average elevations around the four corners of the building. In addition to that, we revised the stormwater plan, basically to collect more water on site and not allow any of it to flow onto 17M. The part of that process was investigating the existing culvert that goes underneath Route 17M. Quite honestly, we had to get a mini excavator onto the other side of that culvert. It was so blocked up, but the excavator was able to remove quite a portion, well, actually all of it, and it cleared the concrete culvert that's underneath 17M, and I believe we did identify the size of it on the plans. And also we made DOT aware of it. I want to thank Noreen and Sean for forwarding the comments to us ahead of time. It was good to be able to read the comments from Sean and the board to be a little bit more prepared for the meeting. And we're ready to address those comments as the board sees fit.
Just because it's been a little while since you've been here, we have at least 3 new members since then. I'm not sure if Nick was with us the last time you were in front of us. Could you just do a quick overview of where the project is, what's the
Sure.
existing and what we're proposing? Thank you.
The project's at 339 Route 17M. The project is located at 339 Route 17M, obviously in the town of Monroe. What exists, there are two structures that exist on the property right now. One is a house and the other is a little bit of a commercial application. We're proposing to remove both structures for one new building, mixed-use building that would house or occupy retail on the first floor, offices on the second floor, and also on the half-story above that, as we'll begin to discuss, I'm sure, further on in our meeting. There existed an open swale that came from the back of the property going towards the front on 17M. We had to identify the catchment area and what was associated with that swale, since we are proposing to enclose it and bring it underground throughout the length of the property from the back to the front, so it would not impact the parking or the building. I believe we're going to discuss that a little bit further because our calculations have to amend accordingly from one of the comments that we did receive from Sean. Yet I do believe that we'll be able to bring that culvert deeper, since it may have to increase in size and still maintain the integrity of the design. We are proposing a retaining wall in the back of the property to retain the neighbor's property there and to allow for parking. I do remember that there are other details that you want associated with that. We had not believed that screening would be needed since the wall was so tall, and if you're standing at the bottom and it's still 10 feet above you, what screening would you need for the surrounding neighbors? But I do see that there's a comment, so we can address a landscape buffer that's in compliance with your zoning code.
At the top of the wall, there was going to be a fence to
Yes.
provide both for safety and
Which
that
we
would
did.
provide additional screening.
Correct.
How tall of a fence is being proposed? Do we know yet?
We do. I inadvertently don't have the plans with me, but I believe the fence in the back is 5 or 6 feet tall. but
Dylan's
we-
looking at the plans now and has it as 4 feet.
Okay, 4 feet with chain link fence, I believe, with screening in it. And that would be for safety and obviously, but also would provide a certain amount of screening from the neighbors. There are architectural plans and elevations and a rendering forthcoming. We are working on that with the owner, trying to blend a certain context with the building, what would be more contextual to the neighborhood, but yet, have a little bit more of an aggressive design, bring it a little bit more towards the 21st century. So we're working that out, and I will have that at our next meeting without question.
I saw that you submitted a memo from September 29th, and it was addressing some comments. I guess it was some of our comments and some of the DOT's comments. Anything that you wanted to bring out from that before we go to our consultants?
Our cover letter?
I'm referring to this.
I believe the one comment letter, we provided pipe sizing calculations, and the plans in our cover letter. I believe what you're holding in your hand is the comments from the DOT.
Okay, thank you very much. John?
Sure. So I had a few comments on this application. I'll just try to hit the high points. So as David mentioned, the building is going to be 2.5 stories tall. And I have a question with regards to sprinklers for the building, whether or not that third story is going to require sprinklers. So
I can address that. So the use of this building does not trigger the sprinkler requirements per the building code. So it is a business use, retail or mercantile, and the size of the building is small, well, in relationship to the building code. So it would not trigger the sprinkler requirements. As opposed to if this was an apartment building or multifamily, then that automatically triggers sprinkler requirements.
So I just would like to refer that to Ben, just for him to confirm, the building inspector to confirm that that's the case. The reason I bring it up is because that building will not be served by municipal water. It'll be served by a private on-site well. So in order to meet the sprinkler fire flow demand, there would have to be a very large pump and a very large amount of storage somewhere on the site in order to meet the sprinkler requirements. So
But this is a three-story?
David's calling it 2.5, but so basically it'll be occupied on three levels.
Uppermost level is not enclosed. Probably half.
Yeah, I mean, it's just listed on here as a two-story building, so.
But we have no problem, if you want to refer it to Ben, it's not an issue, but I'm very confident that the building doesn't need to be sprinkled or have a sprinkler system.
I just want to clarify number 10. Ashley luckily reached out to me earlier today about the dumpster enclosure. I noted that it may require variances based on the setbacks. After further review, there is a 5-foot setback requirement in the code for accessory structures, which Ben had previously determined the dumpster enclosure would be. The only thing I would note that, though, is that in his email with typing the enclosure as an accessory structure, he just would look to see that be maybe shielded better or found on a spot on the site that could potentially be shielded from 17M. And then
He also questioned if it's in the best location for a garbage truck to be able to pick it up. So, and there was also a question about the visibility.
Well, that is the best location because it's directional, so it's going to be a front-loaded truck.
I would agree with that, yes.
Perhaps when you submit the architecturals, then you'll show what that screening or that.
Absolutely.
Our office has one that we, typically see, so I could forward that to you. But essentially, it's a CMU enclosure that would match the facade of the building.
I would imagine we have no, like if we could further enhance.
And then going back to the water supply, I would just ask that David reach out to the Orange County Department of Health to understand if a public water supply will have to be essentially created for this site because of, as I understand, the number of employees triggers whether or not the well supply would be a public water supply. So
Amount of employees, occupants.
it's very complicated, public water supplies, with regards to commercial sites. That's why I would just ask you to reach out to the health department for that clarification. But the way I understand it is it's based on employee count. Number 11. Then moving to grading. So as David noted, there's a retaining wall essentially on 3 sides of the site. At the very tallest, which is basically center of the rear, is approximately, the wall will be 22 feet in height. Obviously, it's a pretty significant wall. So the detail that's includes geogrid, which is essentially more or less fabric, for lack of a better term, that's attached to the wall and is installed behind it. Portions of that geogrid are going to be 16 feet back. So I question how you can install that on portions of the site where you're less than 16 feet from the property line.
As we mentioned in our cover letter, we realize that there'll have to be construction agreements with 2 of the surrounding neighbors. And we're that can be a condition of the final approval, or we could start that process, but we discussed that with the owner, and, we're willing to do that.
So more than likely, I think it'd be appropriate to add that to the site plan, just so that's understood, when it gets to the building department, so.
I think we have on,
Okay.
I think we do know that on Plan C2, no 4.
Number 4.
Number
Yeah.
4, yeah. So, and we could further define that, but we do make mention of it already.
Okay.
We'll further, sure.
Spoken to the neighbors about that yet?
No, not yet. We want to get to a point with the planning board that, which I believe we're at right now, that this is a viable project, that it will, for all intents and purposes, we're worked out the technical aspects of it, so it's becoming more and more within the realm of reality. So now that we're at that stage, we could start doing that.
So then moving to drainage that David had noted before, there was a calculation that was prepared and submitted for this submission. However, we had a couple comments with regards to the flow that was utilized in that calculation. So, we'll look for that and for DOT's acceptance of the drainage for, moving forward. So I think those were I did note, or I had a note from last meeting that the board had authorized the application to be referred to county planning upon receipt of the architectural elevations. So, once we receive those, I'm sure Noreen can forward those to county planning.
How far off are we from having those architecturals?
We'll have it at this coming submission. So what's the submission date? 2 weeks from now, approximately? It'll definitely be within the next submission.
Those, if you just go to, it's section 5731, I believe, that explains, what, as far as the board's architectural review, what they're looking for, in addition to the elevations, the materials, colors, that type of detail. I believe it's 5731, yes.
Submission date is October 27th at noon.
Quite familiar. October what?
27th at noon.
By noon. Okay.
Ashley, other comments?
A couple of additional, one, so the bulk table, it shows the 50-foot rear yard, which is required per 5741 sub F. If you could maybe just add a footnote on there, because it might be confusing. It seems like it's shown as a requirement of the SR, a requirement of the GB, but it's really this separate provision. So just a quick footnote referencing where that 50-yard came from. There wasn't a landscaping plan submitted, so there was one included in a prior submission, I believe, but I didn't see it as part of this submission. So you'll need to include that in the future, show the limits of disturbance and tree plan for all trees that are being removed. And I know you said you were going to update the buffer to comply with the code. And for
I thought we did. Okay, so absolutely, of course, we'll include that in the next submission. Could we, well, after Ashley's finished, I'd like to revisit the buffer and the landscape buffer in the back. But
Sure.
Yeah.
So, if you want to talk about that, we can. I just had one more comment as far as seeker. You did previously circulate and assume lead agency status, so once you have some more information, you'll be able to continue under seeker. And as far as that buffer requirement, so I think your comment letter had said that you were going to be relying on the retaining wall and the existing trees. So if you can show that the existing tree line satisfies that requirement in terms of the type of planting and the width that's required, if you could demonstrate that, is satisfied based on what's there, then that's one way I think you could do it. But otherwise, you'll have to add a sufficient strip or go to the ZBA for a variance. It's not something the board can waive.
Either we're going to come back with some wonderful pictures back of that.
With building the retaining wall, how much of what's there will still be there after that?
Quite honestly, nothing, because to build a retaining wall, they're going to have to terrace back the earth,
Right.
and start with your bottom course out, backfill, because we're not going to want to backfill with the current soils. We're going to want to backfill with structural fill and gravel to disperse with the drainage and things of that nature. So quite honestly, there'll be none of the existing trees there will exist anymore, after building that retaining wall.
Right, so that's what we're gonna need to know is which of those trigger the tree code where either the items have to be replaced on-site, replaced somewhere off-site acceptable to the town, or there's a fee for each tree.
I think it's a one-to-one replacement. So we'll do a count of the trees in the back that will be removed because of the construction of the retaining wall, and as a result, show a direct replacement or replacement in number, of those trees, and include it with the landscaping buffer.
No, actually, I would assume, since we're talking about a construction agreement with the neighbors to build the wall, because you're gonna have to go back onto their property, as far as tree code goes, though, we're only concerned with the trees that are currently on this existing property, not the removal of the trees on the adjacent property.
So that's an interesting point. Shauna just brought that up as well. So if the limits of disturbance are going to include the neighboring properties, those properties, they should really give owners endorsements to, authorize this applicant to essentially ask this board for an approval that will allow disturbance of their property, and then the limits of disturbance will require the tree survey and the tree plan to address any trees being removed
On adjacent
those-
properties.
Yes.
So then I assume in that case, that would also allow the replacement of trees on adjacent property is one option to remediate that removal.
Well, it would be required all, as the law currently is written,
Right.
a one-to-one basis, so then the ones that are removed on that site would need to be replaced.
Right, if they're of sufficient size to be counted under the code. Okay, that makes sense. I'm sorry, David, you wanted to come back to,
I think sooner than later, talking to the neighbors to make sure that they would give that authorization. I don't want you to go down a road that
I
might
appreciate it.
require a alteration.
I think we're at a comfortability level where it's warranted right now, so definitely, without question.
I'm sorry, I thought there was another issue you wanted to come back to after Ashley's comments?
I
Or
think
it's
it's
been
been
addressed?
addressed. It was a landscaping buffer.
Okay.
So we're removing the trees due to the construction of the retaining wall. We have to replace them on a one-to-one. And whatever survives on the neighboring property.
Also meet that buffer, the feet wide, I think, whatever that is.
We will just edit in nature building it and replacing it, so.
But most of that property is already cleared. It's really,
Not a
the
lot.
trees that are there are what's behind the existing house, which isn't far back to the property line, as I remember. Okay, so you have
I would
you have
imagine-
green area to work with here.
Yeah, I would imagine, even at a quick glance, we'll be putting more trees back there.
Right, and I mean, and without having the landscaping plan in front of us, I know I'd like to see some trees at the front of the property along 17, just to, whether they're not necessarily the largest tree, and along the strip if you're coming in the driveway to the right side, you have a green area.
We're going to have to keep them.
Right,
We'll have to keep them low-lying because of the sight distance and being aware of oncoming traffic in both directions, but we can propose some landscaping. They just won't be trees, they'll be low-lying bushes or shrubs.
something. Okay, I'm going to run through the rest of the board, see if we've got any comments, questions. Bob, let's start with you tonight.
None.
Pat?
I just noticed that on your first depiction, you had 2 floors,
Correct,
and we went to 2.5.
correct.
Right, okay.
So we still have a same amount of parking. To make the parking and the building size compatible, we were able to add a half a story. But also in addition to that, we had to decrease the footprint of the building because of certain requirements with drainage. So to reduce the footprint, but keep the area of the building and match the parking that's allowed, we generated a half story.
I know you mentioned it previously, but just remind me, it's retail, mixed use?
Retail on the lowest level, offices on the second level, and it'll be offices also on the half story.
Thank you.
So just while we're on that point, so that half story is going, I assume you're going to have some kind of a peaked roof, and under the center of the peak, that area will be able to be occupied by offices, but as the roof goes lower, that's going to be dead space, attic space, whatever.
Yes.
Something like that. But in the center line, there'll be space for additional offices on that half floor.
Exactly.
So when you're giving on the, I guess we're looking at C2, the square footage of that second and a half story is larger than the two below.
607?
It's 607 versus 597 on the second floor and 585 on the first floor. On the assumption that the building isn't doing this, there's a reason for
585, no, 5,850. Am I missing something?
We've got a total square footage of 2,973. It's listing
Per floor.
585 on the first floor, 597 on the second floor, and on that
Those
half
are the
story,
elevations,
607. Those are elevations?
I believe. First floor elevation.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
the 585.
It's not the square footage, it's the elevation. Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
I
Thank you, thank you.
think I'd be tarred and feathered if I walked out that 585 square foot building. I might have to hang up my hat on that one. Thank you for clarifying that.
So the
I appreciate it.
2973 is the footprint of the building?
Correct.
Okay. Dylan?
No questions.
Nick?
No questions.
My only other question is, I feel like looking at this latest iteration, not only is the building footprint smaller, but over time, it seems to me like there's a little bit less paved portion than was originally proposed. Is that correct, or am I just not remembering that quite right?
Well,
Have we reduced the amount of pavement as well as building size, or?
Well, actually, it's an interesting point because in decreasing the size of the footprint, we were able to add a little more circulation around the building. I mean, that's still considered impervious area, but
Right.
it's not blacktop, it definitely evolved nicely. Actually, I think it's a good blend, good balance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the architecturals on what the building is going to look like itself, which
That
will be
we
the
can
next
do.
key.
I just have one more question.
Please.
Yeah, on the drainage there. I know that area, and there's a lot of water that comes down there from, what is it, Orchard Drive in the back? And, it's just, everything comes down that way. What is the plan? I know you're going to pipe it in underground, and it's going to connect to a retaining area, a sewer, or?
No, the drainage, there's an existing drain pipe underneath 17M towards the.
Oh.
So we're taking this open swale and we're creating a pipe culvert underground, and it's going to take that water, bring it to an existing inlet structure that's right adjacent to the structure that goes underneath the road. So instead of rainwater, stormwater just sheeting through the property, we're going to control it, and bring it within an underground pipe.
Yeah. Interesting, I was out of country on 2011 when we had that storm that flooded that area there, but my understanding is that whole area was flooded. up across the road.
I guess that we have the benefit here of having DOT also look at this to make sure that that's going to be, that the drainage is going to be collected properly to their side.
One of the comments, since we're talking about that, in the DOT email, number 8, the existing box culvert under 17M is in poor condition. A portion is laid up stone, so this culvert should be evaluated prior to this upstream development. Is DOT basically suggesting that if this goes forward with that plan, that based on the evaluation of that box culvert, that you may be responsible for replacing that?
They're responsible.
They would be responsible. So they're saying as part of this, it needs to be taken a look at, and they have to see if they need to do any work. Okay.
Provided them the information, the owner had it surveyed, and as I mentioned earlier, we went through the field work of opening it up on the other side and making it function, because it hadn't been. So.
Okay, any other questions? Ashley, is there anything we need to take care of then tonight for this application? Or we're really waiting for the next submission, and then we can move with our referrals from there? That sounds good to me. David, anything else we can do for you?
And no, thank you. You know what, Board, it's been, your comments have been reasonable, and we look forward to address them. And again, I just want to emphasize, thank you very much for your professional courtesy and having someone contact me to run here, and I thank you for that. So have a good evening, everyone.
We don't mind because we get double time. No.
I remember when I was on planning board, that stipend wasn't covered $1 for every hour. But anyway, we appreciate all your hard work. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, too.
Ashley or Sean, anything else that we need to address this evening?
So there was a proposed amended resolution for BJ. So Jeff, you would have to recuse yourself, but first I do want to ask the other 4 members if they've had a chance to review that. There was just a couple of changes from when you recently approved this application. If the board's comfortable moving forward, the board minus Jeff, then I could go over those with you and consider a motion to adopt that amended resolution.
I'd like to hear about it. No, I'm not. I mean, I just got the thing, I think, yesterday or today or something like that. Or maybe I just found it. So can you briefly tell me what that is?
Sure. So Jeff, maybe if you want to step down, that way the board can.
Yeah. I'm going to recuse myself again from this application.
What?
Your plug.
I can listen.
Act as.
Yeah.
And Pat, if you wouldn't mind stepping into, I guess, the second acting chair role, just to, you can stay where you're seating,
Oh,
but
good.
just to lead the discussion
hat
on
on.
that.
When was this on the agenda?
It is on the agenda for tonight.
When was it previously on the agenda?
Last month?
Last meeting.
Last meeting?
Okay, I see. For the traffic?
When I could, no, this is it was a amended site plan resolution, and the changes are very, I could read them to you because they're very straightforward. It's going to be called the first amended resolution of conditional approval, site plan for RD Management LLC. The first change is to one of the specific condition number 14. This dealt with the containment of the fuel tanks. So
Right.
the applicant's consultant, Stantec, had given a letter of that process. After the resolution was adopted, they asked that the wording of this resolution condition just be amended to better reflect what would occur. So it's going to, where it previously said, the installation, inspection, and sealing of the tanks, fuel lines, and monitoring equipment has been tested by the contractor and approved by a licensed professional. that section is going to be revised to say the installation, inspection, and secondary containment of the tanks and fuel lines and environmental monitoring system has been tested by the contractor and approved. It's really just some word verbiage there. The other item was to delete what was condition, I believe, 15? I'm sorry, condition 16, which said, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy or certificate of compliance for either use, the applicant shall provide the building inspector with proof of acceptance of the sanitary sewer main extension by Orange County Department of Public Works. And it's my understanding that that is not a requirement because there's no sewer main extension.
Right, so originally, the restaurant and the fueling center had one combined pipe that was going to take their discharge flow. Technically, that's a main in DEC's eyes. What they did was separate it so there was two separate pipes taking each discharge. So that's a lateral in DEC's eyes, so DEC does not have to approve it. That's the reason why they went with two pipes. So instead of having a main, or having that language for a main acceptance, there is no main because it's two laterals, so only Orange County DPW is involved, not DEC.
Now, if I remember right, was that driven by, because they did not have a restaurant lease yet, but they would not have the restaurant leased prior to the gas station being available for use?
I guess that could have been one of the reasons, but I think, in my opinion, the main reason was so that they didn't have to go to DEC to get the main extension approval.
And that was it. Everything else in the resolution is as was previously adopted. If someone would like to make a motion to adopt the first amended resolution of conditional approval.
Is there a downside to this? Them not going through like that channel, DEC?
So that's something that it's just not part of the application. So
Okay.
Right, it's not required anymore.
originally they were proposing that and it's just not required anymore.
I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bob, second. Nick Napoli,
Aye.
Dylan Penn,
Aye.
Pat Shea,
Aye.
Bob Gorsak.
Aye. If you're on.
I'll come back.
Okay, any of the planning board members have any issues they need to bring up? Okay, then with that, I will make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, that's the quickest meeting we've had ever.
No,
the
quickest meeting we ever had was like 20 minutes.